There are sentences a civilization builds its laws around never saying. For 4 centuries, humanity kept one of them buried beneath 12 layers of encryption and a silence so complete that even their closest allies mistook it for weakness. Ambassador Selin Var first heard the sentence in the Hall of Concordance while the stars were going out. The hall had been carved into the living crystal of Orison Station, a bright wheel turning above the blue-white sun of the Meridian Assembly. Its walls usually shimmered with translations, trade agreements, and the gentle pulse of 1,000 inhabited systems speaking at once. That morning, the walls showed only darkness, not empty space. Darkness. The hollow tide had crossed the galactic rim 3 days earlier. It did not invade worlds or demand surrender. It consumed energy, memory, and motion. Suns collapsed into cold marbles. Ships froze between heartbeats. Entire civilizations vanished so cleanly that their final messages ended in the middle of words. On the central display, a spreading wound erased constellations Selene had known since childhood. "How long until the tide reaches Meridian?" she asked. The Assembly's predictive engines answered in a voice stripped of comfort. 31 hours. Around her, representatives of 700 species argued over evacuation corridors that no longer existed. The tide had already swallowed the jump lanes east of Orison. The remaining paths could carry perhaps 1 person in every 10,000. At the human delegation table, Admiral Mara Chen sat perfectly still. She was small by Meridian standards. Gray threaded her dark hair. A paper photograph rested beside her data slate, showing a laughing child with 2 missing front teeth and a smear of blue paint across one cheek. Humans still carried paper photographs, Selene had learned, because some memories deserved to exist without a power source. Selene crossed the chamber toward her. "Your worlds lie farther inward," Selene said. "You may still have time." Chen looked at the photograph. "No," she said softly. "We have less." The human admiral placed both hands on the table and stood. "Speaker," she said, "Earth requests authorization to address the full assembly." The arguments thinned into a frightened hush. Humans had joined the assembly 92 years earlier. They were known for rescue tugs, stubborn diplomats, loud music, and agricultural machines that worked long after their warranties expired. Their patrol fleet was respectable but small. Their warships were few enough to appear almost ceremonial beside the armadas of older powers. Speaker Elir inclined 3 silver eyes. "You have the floor, Admiral Chen." Chen faced the chamber. For one breath, she looked older than Selene had ever seen her. "There is something humanity did not tell you," she said. Above them, another sun vanished. "After our first interstellar war, we made a promise. Not to the galaxy. We did not know the galaxy yet. We made it to ourselves. We would never again allow fear to become an excuse for building a weapon we could not stop." The human paused. "We failed." Uneasy color moved across the crystal walls. "We kept failing for 300 years. Every time we invented a new engine, a new factory, a new way to move mass or fold space, someone asked how it might be used if Earth faced extinction. We answered the question, then we hid the answer." Selene felt the tiny scales along her arms rise. "How many answers?" Speaker Elir asked. Chen turned toward the map of dying stars. "Enough." The hollow tide crossed another system. 8 billion voices disappeared from the assembly network. Admiral Chen closed her eyes. When she opened them, she spoke 6 words. "Open the vaults beneath the silence." For 3 heartbeats, nothing happened. Then the empty places on the galactic map began to answer. Brown dwarfs flared with concealed doors. Dead moons split along seams no survey had ever detected. In asteroid belts dismissed as barren rubble, mountains unfolded into engines. Comets changed course, shedding veils of ice to reveal armored hulls kilometers long. The dark between settled systems filled with human ships. Not hundreds, not thousands. The assembly's counting engines climbed until the numbers stopped feeling like numbers. Selin watched formations appear in regions where no human colony had ever been registered. Each formation divided into smaller formations, and those divided again. Silent carriers released clouds of vessels. Factory arcs woke inside lightless systems and began printing replacement craft from the bones of uninhabited worlds. The human patrol fleet had never been humanity's fleet. It had been the ribbon tied around a locked door. Speaker Ilir's voice trembled. "Admiral Chen, what are we seeing?" "The quiet fleets," Chen said. "You concealed this from every treaty inspection." "Yes. You could conquer the assembly." Chen looked at him with an exhaustion deeper than anger. "That is why we concealed them." The first quiet fleet reached the hollow tide at the edge of the Sorin Reach. Selin expected a battle, beams, explosions, the familiar violence of fleets colliding. Instead, the human ships opened like seeds. They released billions of mirrored fragments into the dark, each one carrying a pulse of carefully shaped energy. The fragments arranged themselves across millions of kilometers, not as a wall, but as a cage written in gravity. The hollow tide surged toward them. The fragments ignited. Space folded inward. The tide shuddered. For the first time since it entered the galaxy, the darkness stopped moving. Then more human formations arrived. They did not arrive from one direction. They emerged above the galactic plane, below it, and from the cold spaces between inhabited systems. They came in spirals so vast that the tactical display pulled farther and farther back until stars looked like dust around them. The quiet fleets surrounded the hollow tide. Selene had seen the assembly's greatest armadas gather for war games. She had watched 10,000 ships turn in formation and thought no sight could make her feel smaller. The humans deployed millions. Speaker Ilir stared at the map. "Admiral Chen," he whispered. "What are they doing?" Chen's officers worked in quiet voices around her. They called out temperatures, alignment windows, and the names of formations taking their places around the caged darkness. "Making certain," Chen said. Before the first contact, human observatories had recorded the tide's passage through dead systems. It consumed stars, but bent around certain gravitational harmonics. It fed on ordered energy, but stumbled when that energy arrived as layered contradictions. The quiet fleets were not firing weapons in the way the assembly understood weapons. They were composing an impossible chord. Each ship added one note. Each formation adjusted to the tide's response. Across the Sorin Reach, gravity tightened around the darkness until the hollow tide compressed into a sphere no larger than a moon. Then it adapted. Black tendrils struck at the cage, human mirrors vaporized by the billion. The tide clawed toward inhabited space, and the humans answered by bringing still more fleets out of hiding. Factory arcs unfolded around dead suns. Carriers emptied their holds. Warships formed layers within layers until the entire system became a human machine. The assembly listened to the names: Nairobi, Mombasa, Kyoto, Lima. Cities from a single small world, spoken by officers commanding enough force to frighten the stars. They had expected humanity's secret to sound like thunder. It sounded like people calmly finishing work they had hoped never to begin. On the display, the largest human formation gathered beyond the gravity cage. Ships stacked in concentric shells. Factory arcs broke themselves apart to feed a weapon forming in their center. At first, it resembled a ring. Then another ring appeared inside it. Then a third. Starlight curved around the structure until the dark itself seemed to lean away. "What is that?" Selin whispered. Chen took the paper photograph from the table and held it in both hands. "The reason the vaults were sealed." The hollow tide struck the cage again. One layer failed, then another. Admiral Chen looked toward the tactical officers waiting at the human table. Her voice did not rise. "Erase it." The ring opened. For a fraction of a second, every window in Orison Station turned white. The weapon did not send energy toward the hollow tide. It removed the distance between the tide and the furious heart of 12 captive stars. Their combined light arrived at once, focused through the human rings and driven inward by the gravity cage. The hollow tide had devoured suns. Humanity fed it 12 in the same instant. The darkness buckled. It tried to divide. The quiet fleets divided with it. Every fragment met another cage. Every tendril met another sun. Across the Sorin reach, black shapes ignited and vanished one after another, a constellation of artificial dawns burning in perfect sequence. The hollow tide did not retreat. It did not escape. It ceased to exist. Across the assembly map, the spreading wound disappeared. Suns remained suns. Ships moved again. Billions of interrupted messages resumed in the middle of words. In the Hall of Concordance, no one spoke for a long while. The counting engines estimated that humanity had lost nearly a third of the quiet fleets in 6 hours. Enough power to terrify every government in the assembly had been spent without hesitation to save worlds whose people had never seen Earth. Speaker Ilir finally broke the silence. "Admiral Chen," he said. "What happens now?" Chen placed the photograph carefully beside her slate. "Now we seal the vaults again." The speaker studied the surviving formations scattered across the stars. "And you expect us to trust that you will?" Chen looked around the hall at the frightened faces of 700 species. "No," she said. "We expect you to watch us do it." Human engineers transmitted every shutdown sequence. Alien observers were invited aboard the factory arcs. The quiet fleets returned to dead moons, brown dwarfs, and empty systems. Doors closed. Engines cooled. The hidden armada folded itself back into silence. Not because humanity had become harmless, because humanity understood that power was not proven by using every weapon you possessed. Sometimes it was proven by building a door strong enough to keep your own hands away from the lock. Years later, Selene kept a copy of Admiral Chen's 6 words in the Hall of Concordance archives. She placed them beside the records of the worlds the quiet fleets had saved. Visitors often asked why the sentence was preserved. Selene always gave them the same answer. Because the most important thing humanity revealed was not that they could open the vaults. She would look through the crystal walls toward the stars, bright and moving and alive. It was that they had spent centuries choosing not to. Thank you for staying with us through this journey among the stars. If stories of impossible choices, quiet courage, and the strange things humanity carries into the dark speak to you, please like, follow, and return for more intergalactic adventures.